Hello, everybody. Oh, my hair is all messed up. Um, Pardon the mess. I'm in the last stages of fixing this uh, curtain that got pulled out of the wall by our lovely cats. So, let's see what kind of questions we've got already lined up for us. Uh, I will go to the comments and go from there. I will also open up my emails and see if anything has come in. I want to remind you, everybody, that we do have a WhatsApp link for a WhatsApp group. It is down in the description. So scroll down into the description if you want to know when we're having these Q and A's and when we're not having. I think that's more important because we've got kind of a regular schedule. And I post the links, but I also post on days when I say, okay, we're not going to have a Q&A this week. Okay, and I think that's probably more important so that you don't waste your time. So I'm not seeing any in the emails. Let's see. Nope, nothing comes up in the email. Let's go to the comments. Now I have a comment here about how do you increase your range. Not sure I will spend. Oh, maybe this just got interesting. Okay, here's a question on lip buzzing. I don't know what language, Turkish. Is it normal that I cannot make any sound during the first attempts? Talking about, hello, Jeffrey, hello, Dennis. Talking about lip buzz, is it normal to not make any sound? Yes, it is actually very, very, very normal. Okay? Very, very normal. Because what we're looking for is that perfect balance. If you don't have the perfect balance, there's two things that can happen. Either the lips don't come together enough to counteract the air. I'm over exaggerating that so you can see it. Okay. The lips are not close enough, or you bring your lips in too tight and nothing comes out. Okay. I'm over exaggerating what that looks like, but that's the basis of why lip buzz doesn't work, especially if someone has not done lip buzz before. Okay. Hello, David. David says, "Good evening, Eddie. Hope you are good." I'm doing great, thank you. So that's a quick answer. Now, I was gonna maybe not respond to this in the Q&A. The guy says, "How do I improve my high notes?" Oh, it's the same guy. All right. This guy says, I'm a senior. I want to do jazz region this year, but I can't get my high notes to come out as easy as everyone else. I have to reset my lips. Oh, well, that's more information. Let's talk about having to reset. If you have to reset, you know what? Let's back up. That's why I call my book One Range, is because the way you play high and the way you play low is the same. You know? Now, before I do this, this might be the worst high notes I've ever played because I've been taking a break. It's been 8 months. I've told you guys about this before. It's been 8 months since I've practiced high notes. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. But let's go for it. Okay, what did I just do? I just lost the comments again. That's happened to me once before. Oh, how do I get out of that? Oh, I got it back. Woohoo! All right, so I hope I didn't just mess something up. All right, so high notes. We want to be able to use the same mouthpiece placement, the same embouchure strength, not strength, the same embouchure. I call it posture. There are things that change. So if someone reads what I have to say about range development and says, Mr. Lewis says don't change anything, that's not what I said. There are things like pivot that do change, and the tenseness of the muscles, they do change. Okay, what we're not changing is placement in the lips, mouthpiece placement. Anyway, here is some high note stuff, and what I want you to pay attention to is how little of this has to move to get from the low notes to the high notes. Okay, now just keep in mind, I have been taking 8 months off. I don't do this anymore. I'm not. It's not a permanent break from the high notes. It's my hiatus from high notes is connected to my health. And I'll tell you what, things have been better in my health. This is not the only thing involved. This is not the only thing I've changed, but things in my health have been better since I stopped playing the high notes. I do plan to go back. Okay, it just, and I don't mind demonstrating. So let's see what happens. We did this once before, maybe a couple months ago. Okay, that's enough of that. That was a A above high C on a deep mouthpiece. So you see how the mechanics, the way my face is structured, everything is the same from the lowest notes to the highest notes. That's what the Run Range book is. Okay, that's the One Range book, is how do you do that? How do you get to where you don't have to make such drastic changes? Like, I exaggerate when I make, I kind of sort of make fun of those guys, and they'll play. Right? They'll have to have a whole reset of their everything in their face to go to the higher notes. And that's what this guy's talking about. He says he can't play the higher notes. He has to reset his lips. So basically, when you reset, you've got two embouchures. One embouchure for the low notes, one embouchure for the high notes. That's not desirable. If you think in terms of logic, one of those has to be wrong. Do you want to extend your high one down? Normally, when people have this, it's because they don't have strength. Now, I have to be clear about the strength thing, because you'll often hear me say lately that the strength that you need to play high is it levels out after a while. Okay, so let's be clear about what I mean by that. In other words, to play super C doesn't require look what I just showed you. Look what I just showed you. I played A above. I can still do the super C, right? Even though I don't practice this and I don't play it, and I don't mess around showing people this except for maybe once a month. Okay, I can still do super C. Okay, the super C is still there. That's kind of washed out sounding, but I still have the strength to do it with absolutely no time spent doing it. And I'm showing you that so you know what I'm saying when I say that it's not strength that gives you the high notes. But where things get contradictory is in the definition of the high notes. This guy's a high school student talking about the All-State Etudes, which I wrote two of them. There's 3 Etudes, I wrote 2 of them. There are no high notes in the All-State Etudes, okay? So this is where things get confusing. Yes, it does take more chops to get from middle C, tuning note C, there is more strength required for high C than there is for tuning C. That is true. And there are students that don't have the strength to play above the staff. So we're talking about 2 different things. Once you get past high C, you don't need more strength to get to the next C. That's where the clarity comes in. Yes, you need strength, muscular strength. If you don't have the muscular strength and you keep trying to get those high notes, and my sound is terrible today, I apologize for that. Anyway, what was I saying? You have to develop strength. If you don't have that strength and you keep trying to play the high notes, you will develop some other system, usually involving pressure and usually involving a lower lip placement to get those high notes. And that's not desirable. There's all kinds of bad stuff that can happen when you do that. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So his question is, how does he fix that? I'm going to have to say that the best answer is my one range book. Just type one range, Eddie Lewis, in the search engine, and it'll take you to, or you could go to my website, eddielewis.com, EDDIELEWIS.com. Now, here's the thing. What I teach is not overnight. It's not a quick fix. Okay? And that's the problem. And you know what? That's one of those things, those life things that you have to start to make work for you. I hope I'm making sense. If you waited till now to get that fixed, if you waited till now to do something about it, I'm not. So, you can find somebody online that will give you the secret formula, the magic baton treatment. Bing, do this, and now you'll have high notes. I do believe that's possible. That is possible. There are some people. Here's how I see that work. You have this guy that had problems with the high notes. He fixes his very specific problems. And now he's going around telling other people how to do this. The problem is most of the people that he's telling this didn't have the same problems he had. So you try what he said to do, and it doesn't work for you. Now you could move on to the next guy who has the same story. He had trouble with high notes. He fixed his high notes, but it was something very specific to him. And you try that one and it doesn't work for you either. Because it's sort of like playing the lottery. Better odds than the lottery, but it's sort of like playing the lottery, right? You have to find the guy that's got the magic wand. You've got to find the magic wand that actually fits your problem. And if you do find that, then yes, there's a slight chance. And this is how these guys make their money, because it'll work for some. It will work for some, and then they'll have them make a video and say, "Oh, look, this is how bad it was. This is how good it is now. And this guy's method is awesome. Look at how well it helped me." Okay. Um, but no, really, the best way. So, am I saying that my way is better? Yes, my way is better because my way isn't based on what worked for me. My way is based on what worked for literally all kinds of different students, not the same kind of student, all kinds of different students. Okay. So, depending on how bad your is, I had a student today tell me that he's concerned about his range because he's got an audition coming up and he's got to play a scale that goes up to high C. And I said, well, he didn't tell me that first. First, he told me, I don't think I have the range for it. I said, and I asked him to spell it out exactly. What notes do you need and where are you now? And in the end, he said that he's only a whole step off. Well, we can work with a whole step. If you're a whole step off in the range, we can kind of nudge up from where you are to cover what you need. But if your range only goes up to E in the staff and you need a high C in 3 or 4 months, I think you need to look at somebody else's method. Now, if you were to come here and take an in-person lesson for something like that, now I guess it could be a Skype lesson too. But I think this is more true for in-person lessons. There are times that the whatever it is that's holding you back from the range, there are times when I can see you in person and know like that exactly what's wrong and help you fix that. And then now all of a sudden you're playing that higher range. It's rare, but it happens. That's kind of sort of linked to what I was saying about finding other guys' methods. But most of the time, it takes a long time to expand your range. I say long time, weeks at least, weeks, months, maybe a few years, depending on how far you're trying to go. So that's the question I was talking about that the guy asked on the one video. All right. So any other questions? I don't think I have somehow that window closed. I don't think I have other comments that would work here. Let me open that up again. Here's one comment. The guy says, "This helped me too much." I'm not sure how you get helped too much. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't have any more questions. Any questions from whoever's hanging out right now? I hope all of my Houston folk are safe and have their electricity back after the hurricane. We were blessed. I think we only had like 24 hours of no electricity. So that was very fortunate. Any other questions? I would have got my hair cut, but my barber had a sign up that he's in surgery. So we'll see. Dennis says, I've seen good results with the CHOPS Pro book and the 50% rule. Much improved endurance with stronger range. Thanks, Eddie. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Extremely glad to hear that. You know, I tell people we don't do a lot of sales, right? We don't do sales. I actually believe that I hate using that word product. But that's what just popped into my head. I actually believe that the product should sell itself. That if it works, people know that it works. This is not and it's not something that's just like cult like, right? That people do because because they believe, right? It's it's not something that they do because everyone has pressured them into believing that it would work. They actually get results. It's practical, hands-on results. So that's what I like. That's what I like. It's the fact that you know in most business models you have to put a lot of time and effort and money into to skills skills sales and I've really never had to do that a lot. I mean, there's got to be some, right? But we don't do a lot of that. David asks, Eddie, do you play in a church? You should. You should. It would have been nice to listen to you play my dad outside on his journey home. Yes, I do play at a church. And here's the thing. We actually play hymns. Um, we There's a church now. Don't come tomorrow if you're in the Houston area, because I just got a text saying that probably because we don't have electricity. I was in that area earlier doing some shopping, and there's no electricity. So I'm assuming that the church has no electricity. So, but anyway, it's uh, Faith Springs Baptist Church in Pearland. And it's kind of an intimate thing. I love small churches. I always have. Um, the music is me, the pastor playing piano and singing, and they've added a bass player lately. And it's almost like, I forgot that guy's name. It's almost like country western, uh, that style of hymns, but it works real well with the trumpet. And I would have loved to play at your dad's journey home, as you put it. I would have been honored to do that. So yeah, the whole church thing for me is kind of bittersweet. I think some of you guys might have seen the video I made recently. Um, I always thought when I was growing up that a Christian trumpet player would get Christian gigs, right? I always thought that the churches would want somebody playing trumpet that actually believed what they believe, being a Christian. And I haven't found that to actually be true. I think most of the churches, and it's not like I can't play, right? For over 20 years, there were a large number of people in Houston that considered me the best trumpet player in Houston for over 20 years. And the only reason, I think the only reason that didn't continue is because most of those people died. So that's one quick way to change your career, is when all of your contacts pass away, right? But yeah, I mean, it's to me, the fact that they're not eager to hire someone that actually believes in their faith. And it could be just the way I look. But you know what? That's more of a personality thing. Anyway. So, Sean, hello, Sean. Sean says, hi, Eddie. I'm coming in late. One question about your terminology. I've always heard of tuning C, double C, triple C. You mentioned super C. Is that the same as double C? I'm just curious. Uh, Everybody has their own naming system. I'll tell you my naming system. Okay. I have low C, which is the C beneath the staff. Tuning note C, which is the C, um, like, in the staff. Then we have high C, which is the C above the staff, and then super C is the C above that. I don't do double and triple because um, nobody agrees on what that means. Now, super C, I think there's less disagreement. Does that make sense? I think if you say super C, more people will know what you're talking about. Same thing with high C. More people are going to know what you're talking about. If you say double C and triple C, there's a lot of confusion there. And it's not that I don't know what those are. It's not that I don't know what that means, but there's no consensus on what that stuff is. Now, there probably are people out there that will argue that there is a consensus. They don't know what a consensus is, because if they have to argue it and against other people, then they kind of sort of miss the point. I have a drummer friend. Everything he says has to be right. And I told him one time, I said, I heard there's no consensus on certain things in a drum part, because I write drum parts, drum sets in some of my jazz music. And he got angry. He says, no, this is the right way. This is the right way. That's the right way. And all of that over there, that's the wrong way. But I've studied this stuff from the composer side. Really, really, what the famous people say you should do, it's all over the map. All over the map. Now, maybe more modern. There's more of a standard than there used to be. But no. And it's the same thing with this high C stuff. Double C and triple C. I can't imagine if you have double and triple C, then, I mean, the C above super C, I've only heard one guy get even close to that. I don't think he even got that far, right? So triple C has to be super C, which means that regular high C is double C. That makes no sense whatsoever. To me, that just doesn't make any sense. So that's why I use the terminology that I use: low C, tuning note C, high C, super C. What's interesting, I just sent this information in an email to a student earlier this week. It's funny how the same subject come up sometimes. Any other questions? I'm thinking about putting on. How many? I hope you guys have seen the video series. I did a series with bass player David Craig. I think I have a playlist of just David's videos. Yeah. Let me copy this playlist. How many of you guys have heard the videos in this playlist? I'm thinking about doing another similar thing, but with two other friends of mine, guys that I worked with for a long time in a band called South America. And I would like to do a series of, you could call it Latin jazz, except I don't want any percussion in it. So really that's not Latin jazz, technically. Dennis says he enjoyed them very much. So yes, I would like to do something similar to that. Something to give me something to look forward to. Let me say that again. Something for me to look forward to musically. I think I need that right now in my career. And we would do like, I know for sure Hugo de Pina and Una Mañana and Te Vi. Jeffrey says, excellent stream today. Very interesting. Well, very good. Thank you. So yes, I want to do another series like that, maybe 10 songs. And maybe actually have an interview with the guys, because we worked together a lot for about 10 years. And then that was just the one band. We also still work together. I'm not saying we don't work together now, but we work together in a band, the same band. South America. It was a great. I used to tell people that South America was the first truly professional band I ever worked with. Now, why do I say used to? People get offended. If I was in a band that I played with before that, then they say, "Oh, well, why don't you think my band was truly professional?" Well, so and even now, I probably should keep my mouth shut about that, because people do get offended. But when the standards are raised that much higher, I mean, as a musician, you enjoy that, right? Because we're not just talking about uh, professional. Hello, Seppo. We're not just talking about the professionalism, right? Which was obviously part of it. Being on time and wearing the proper clothing and stuff like that. All the ethical business stuff. But also the musical standards. And when you put those two together, that for us as musicians, that's pleasant, right? That's it just doesn't get better than that. And I did end after that. I did play with some bands that were even better, like David Caceres. I was with David Caceres for 20 years. I was with the Ed Gerlach band for a long time. So there are a lot of bands that I played with that had those kinds of high standards. But before South America, a lot of the bands that I played with were just pickup bands. And the standards, if you have a pickup band the standards can't be as high because every show you're just surviving. You're just trying to do what you have to do to get through it. So yes, I remember the a lot of times telling people just how thrilling it was to play. Oh, and then you know what else is included when I say highly professional? Is is the pay, right? I think they doubled or tripled my pay from what I was making with the other bands. I mean, it's a win-win situation, right? And so the next series I want to do would include the bass player and the piano player from that band, that Salsa America band. We would do. I want to do at least two boleros, um, a couple sambas, a rumba. Of course, all of this without the percussion, so that kind of because I'm going to pay these guys, and I can't afford a whole band. Maybe I should start a what do they call that? Uh, 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 where you ask people to invest. Yeah, like I would ever do that. Um, I mean, there are situations where I might do that, but no. Anyway, um, yeah, that's what it's called, Kickstarter. Um, but no, I wouldn't do that. So yes, I will pay the guys what I can afford to pay them. I won't have any percussion, and I think this is what I want to do next. Maybe have it published in the fall or the winter. But yeah, I need something to look forward to so that I can keep my mind on the ball, right? Keep focused on what needs to get done. Pull me up out of this muck that I'm in right now. Uh, any other questions? Any other questions? I keep looking out the window. Like I told you guys, this window right here, the cats tore the yeah, it's one of the most intense sheet wall repairs I've ever had to do. I actually did a good job, I think. I sound like a politician. I did great. um, but yeah, so now that the window's not covered, I see everything that goes by. Any other questions? I'll give you guys a few more minutes. If we don't have questions, I'll shut it down. You know what's interesting? This year, I have students auditioning for Allstate and All Region all over the country. You know, what happens when it comes to Allstate, um, I used to teach a lot of students here in Texas. I've had more than my share of all state students, and even more than that of my share of all region students. Of course, you have to make region before you get to all state. And I don't know what the other states call all this stuff, but they do have all state, right? So looking at the way the different states do this stuff has really been eye-opening for me. Oh, anyway, what I was telling you is that in the past I had a bunch of all-state students, all high school students, and then as long before COVID, by the way, I started teaching more online, teaching more adult students. And when that happened, there were actually years when I had no high school students auditioning for any region or anything. I either had really, really young students or adults. Nobody was auditioning. And that went on for a few years. That's when it was hard to write etudes for the all-state stuff, was because I didn't have students auditioning. And what was the point of me writing if, I mean, I don't do that for reasons that other people might think that I do it, right? It's my way of contributing for my students. So, but now I'm picking up more high school students around the country. And it's very interesting, the different rules, the different standards, the different um, the music that they use. It's really interesting to me to see how what's different, what's the same. Uh, it's different. It's interesting for me to see now how good the student is and whether or not they make it. Stuff like that. All right, Seppo says, in which acoustic conditions do you prefer practicing the trumpet? Let's see. I prefer the worst conditions. That's probably not what you're looking for, but that's how I see it. Um, it's in the bad conditions that you find out what's wrong with your sound or projection or whatever. Okay? When you when everything's beautiful, like most people would say to the question, to answer your question, oh, I love to practice in the concert hall so that I hear, or in a church, right? So I hear that beautiful reverb, and but all that is you lying to yourself, because you don't really sound that good. That's the room that you're hearing, not you, right? And I don't mean you. I mean, um, in English, I'm talking about you, everybody, right? So, so yes, if we want to talk about pleasure, I find pleasure in playing in beautiful halls. I find pleasure playing in stairwells. There used to be a stairwell in the university in El Paso, and I would often go in there and just because of the sound that it made, go in there and improvise for a half hour. I even wrote a composition based on one of those improvisations. Um, but if we use the word prefer, if we're not talking about my pleasure, then I want a room that's going to emphasize my worst traits so that I can hear them and do something about it. I hope that makes sense. So, actually, to tell you the truth, this room that we're in right here is perfect for what I'm talking about. And if I need more truth, I can put my bill in the wall. That's a technique that we learned in El Paso. But yeah, this room in here has no, the reverb that I do have in here is terrible. It doesn't bounce the pretty stuff back. It bounces the horrible stuff back. Seppo says I have found practicing with brass ensembles in conditions with lots of reverb very tiring to my ear and focus. Is it normal? Yes, I would agree with that. I would agree with that completely. Now, the word practicing. Once you're done practicing and you want to have a beautiful sound, then you go out into those nice reverb halls and you now that said, there is one exception to what I'm talking about. You do want to practice at least a little bit in those high reverb halls so that the students can get used to it. But as a normal place to practice, it's tough. It is tough. What other questions? We'll take one or two more questions, and then I'm going to get my painting done. I found an old bottle of paint that matches the color that we have on the walls here, and I'm going to finish up. Woohoo! Finish this project up. It's taken me a month. I have my paint right here. Left over from the previous job that we did. Any other questions? Do you have, this is from Seppo, do you have a specific word for the sound when missing a tone? Here we call it pixie. We call it misspeak. It's like the sound when missing a tone. So like you're playing along and one of the notes doesn't come out. Is that what you're talking about? The word I always use for that is misspeak. MISSPEAK or something like that. Misspeak. Missing a note. Yeah, that's what we call that misspeak. At least that's what I've always called it. I had a student, I don't remember who it was. I had a student, and I asked him, because I told him that's misspeak. And it was a lesson in the last couple of weeks. And I said, well, he just finished playing for me. And I said, what went wrong here? And he goes, well, That was a misspeak. And I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding there because um, the misspeak itself isn't excused. It's not like you know. I don't want my students to think that the so it's kind of contradictory, right? Misspeaks happen. We we don't want to stress over it. I tell people all the time. I say this is the hardest thing I have to teach, and it's not about the misspeaks specifically. It's about our standards and how we should behave, because certain things should be okay, and other things, the same things. I say other things. The same exact thing is not okay. How do you have, because if the misspeaks are okay, let's use right now misspeaks, but there's other stuff. If the misspeak is okay, you're not going to get better. So you have to have a attitude that says, I'm not going to have misspeaks. But you also have to have the attitude of not crying over spilt milk. So the contradiction is in when are you thinking what? The standard you hold yourself to needs to be the highest that you are capable of. And that includes the misspeaks. A misspeak is not okay. But when they happen, you should not have guilt. You should not have, you shouldn't be pounding your feet. You shouldn't be going back to fix it. That's not what we mean. And that's what I mean by the hardest thing that I teach is you have to apply the right standards at the right time. And let me tell you guys this anecdote. Um, I went. I used to have two students at a magnet school, an arts magnet school, and the band director invited me out to speak, and I told the students, it was a junior high, maybe even elementary. I told the students that I had a bad attitude, and I asked them how many of you think I might have a bad attitude, and they nobody raised their hand. So I explained it to them. I said, I don't care how well I play when I'm performing. And then I asked them again. I said, how many of you think I have a bad attitude? And the whole class raised their hand. And I told them, I said, I'm not kidding. I don't care how well I play when I perform. But the reason I don't care is because I cared so much when I was home practicing. And that describes that contradiction I'm talking about. You have to be able to turn those standards on and off at will. And in other words, your musical standards should be intellectual, not emotional. Your musical standards should be practical, not emotional. Your musical standards should be preemptive and not reactive. Your musical standards are what you do when you're at home perfecting your skill. This, when I say this is the hardest thing I have to teach, it's because people are usually emotional. They either hate their playing or they love their own playing. Both of those is not helpful. Neither one of those is helpful. If you are responding emotionally, it doesn't help. It does nothing for your progress. Before you perform, the term I use with the students is it's just business. If you make a mistake when you're practicing, you don't have an emotional reaction to that. You don't pound your leg. You don't grunt. You don't hit the music stand. It's just business. You acknowledge that this didn't work the way it was supposed to work. Now do something about it. Something practical, something that's going to fix the problem. You don't just respond emotionally. And I think that's the problem when I say that most people, that this is the hardest thing I have to teach. It's because most people, they approach the music emotionally like that. And it's difficult to get them to disengage that emotion. You know, we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate because as trumpet players, we've got a avenue to express those emotions. And it's just bizarre to me. It's just bizarre to me that there are people who will, in the process of practicing, let all this emotion spill out. But when they actually play the trumpet, there's no emotion in their playing. That's the opposite of what we should be doing. When you're practicing, there should be no emotional reaction to what happens. But while you're playing, you should be pouring your heart out. And most people, it's the opposite way around. They're totally dead clinical in the way they play. No emotion whatsoever. They just play notes. Ba, 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 ba. It's just notes. I heard one guy talking about vomiting up notes. Okay. And that's what they do. They just vomit up notes. No emotion expressed whatsoever. And then they'll put the horn down and punch the music stand, stomp their foot, growl. That's backwards. That's backwards. It should not be like that. So yes, we don't want to have misspeak notes. We don't want to have misspeak notes. But when it happens, and regardless of whether it happens in a performance or your practice, you don't, there's no emotional reaction. And I'm still not doing the best I can to explain that. Anyway, all right, good live stream, you guys. We will do this again next week, I believe, God willing. God bless you. Have a great weekend. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.